Alright, welcome to today's lesson on order of operations. Alright, so today is just one page. It should be a pretty shortish lesson. Alright, uh, the main thing we're focusing on is BEDMAS. Right? So whenever we have an equation or an expression, right, we always work with the brackets first. Okay, so anything inside the brackets we will do first, whether it be plus, minus, square roots, all that. And then we do exponents. Right, so after the brackets, we do the exponents. And then we will divide and multiply. Right, when it comes to dividing and multiplying, we always work from left to right. Right, so it doesn't actually matter if it's divide. We don't really do divide before multiply, but I guess BAMDAS doesn't sound as good as BEDMAS. Right, and same as addition and subtraction. Right, with when you add and subtract, we always do it at the very end, but we always work left to right. Right, so we don't really do add before subtract. We just do it left to right. Again, I think it just makes the acronym sound better. Alright, so here's a bunch of examples here. Alright, looking at our first question here. Alright, following BEDMAS, we do the division first before we do the subtraction here. Right, so we first have 10 divided by 2, which is 5. And then we do 20 minus 5 to get 15. Right, BEDMAS. Division first and then subtraction. Right, and of course, sometimes we get brackets. And we do whatever's in a bracket first, even if it's subtract. And then we do multiplication here in this case. So we got 3 times 8 minus 2, which is 6. 3 times 6 is 18. Alright, next we got 2 brackets here. Of course, we work left to right. Right, so we do both of those inside a bracket first. And we notice here that there's no sign in between the brackets. Whenever there's no sign, it is multiplication. Because mathematicians like me are super lazy, we just do multiplication if there's no sign. So 5 plus 2 in the first bracket is 7. 9 minus 7 in the second bracket is 2. Multiply together is 14. Alright. Next, this one's we covered this in our exponents unit, or not unit, in our lesson with exponents here, right? And the reason why, even though this is an even exponent, it's still gonna be negative because we can think of this as negative 1 times 4 to the power 4. Right? The negative sign, the negative 1 is outside of the exponent. Right? So we do the exponent first, and then we do the multiplication. So 4 to the power 4 is 256. And of course, multiply to negative 1, negative 256. So that's the reason why we always put a negative sign in front, right? It's not quote unquote included in the exponent. Right? And of course, as you can expect, of course we have negative numbers in BEDMAS. Right? So we do exponents first here. And then we do multiplication. So we get negative 3 times 25. Because negative 5 squared is positive 25. That gets us negative 75. Okay, a few more steps here. So, of course, we do the brackets first. Right, but in this case, the brackets here, the whole point of a bracket here is to indicate that this negative 3 is included in the exponent. Right, and then we do the exponents, and then division. Or use our color. And division, and then we can do everything else. Alright, so we got 4 squared minus 8 divided by 2 plus negative 3 squared, which is 9, positive 9. And then we do the exponents. So 4 squared is 16. And then lastly, we do the division, which is 4. and then we subtract and add from left to right, which is 21. Right, so we notice something here actually. Right, all of those numbers are separated by an add or subtract. So we can actually do all three of those at the same time. Right, alternatively, just to save some steps, we can literally just skip straight to 16 minus 4 plus 9. Oh, wrong color, plus 9. Right, if it's separated by plus and minus like this, we can actually just do all the divisions, exponents all separately. And again, just to save some time. Okay, next. Right, as you can see, we have two little sections here, split up by the plus. So once again, we can actually just do both sides separately at the same time. So, but either way, first we deal with the brackets. Right, so on the right bracket, of course we can just do the bracket, which do that first. But on the left bracket, right, notice here how we have an exponent here, and then also an add. So inside this bracket, we still follow the Venn method. So inside the bracket, we do the exponent first. Next, of course, we complete the bracket on the left side. Right, we will add negative 15 to whatever 4 squared is. And then on this side, right, then after we get this number in the middle, then we can do our exponent. And then the last step on both cases, we got 2 multiplied by whatever's in this bracket, and then 4 multiplied by whatever's in this bracket. So we will do that step last. Oh, before adding both of them up. Okay, so in the left we got 2 times negative 15 plus 16. That's 4 squared. And then 3 minus 1 is 2. Then we do the exponents. So negative 15 plus 16 is just 1. 2 squared is 8. Right, which is just 2 plus 32. $34. Right, just like that. And of course, just because I like to make things hard, we got fractions as well. So once again, we see that we got a exponent here. We can do that first. Next, we have a division here. We'll do that next. And then, of course, we got a subtraction here. Okay, exponents. 4 over 9 squared is 16 over 81. And remember, when we divide fractions, we are just multiplying its inverse, right? We flip it over and then we multiply it. So this guy becomes times 5 over 4 minus 2 over 3. We can reduce ahead. Right, 4 and 16 can be both divided by 4. So 4 divided by 4 is 1, 16 divided by 4 is 4. And then we multiply the fractions. So 4 times 5 on top is 20. 81 times 1 is 81, of course. We subtract 2 over 3 from that. Lowest common denominator is 27. I know, big numbers here. Alright, so this minus 54 over 81. And this comes out to be 74 over 81. Just like that. Don't have to worry about mixed numbers neither. Last one. Alright, so we got a bracket inside a bracket now. Alright, so of course we do that step first. Alright, if you notice here, why do we need a bracket here? It's a fraction. Why do we need a bracket? Alright, so remember, a fraction is literally just division. So, this means that we're dividing 2 and 3 first, and then squaring whatever the answer is. Right? But of course, we don't want to work with decimals. Fractions is a bit easier to work with. Right? So, we do our exponents inside the bracket first. Then we do the subtraction inside the bracket. And then lastly, we multiply everything. So 7 over 8 remains. We got 4 over 5 minus 4 over 9. Right, 2 squared and 3 squared. Lowest common denominator is 45. So we multiply those out. 4 times 9 is 36. 4 times 5 is 20. We get negative 7 over 8 times 16 over 45. Right, once again, we can reduce ahead. 8 and 16 can be both divided by 8, leaving us with 1 and 2. So that gives our final answer of 7 times 2 is 14, 1 times 45, 45. Right, and that's it. Right, so that's BandMath for you. Again, there's not really any trick questions or anything in BandMath. It's just as long as you followed the brackets, exponents, divide, multiply, add, subtract, then it's fine. Just remember, we have both divide and multiply, and both addition and subtraction. We go from left to right. Alright, that's all. Good luck practicing.